Washington, D.C. is a city of conflict, special interests, and for the journalists working there, potential conflicts of interest. 6 months ago, Jeff Bezos, the tech baron from Amazon.com, bought the Washington Post for $250 million. 2 months later, Amazon, a company that's all about data, won a $600 million contract with the Central Intelligence Agency for cloud computing services. That has set off some alarm bells. A group called rootsaction.org is asking, how can the Post write a piece on the CIA without first disclosing to its readers that its owner's other company, Amazon, is being paid to safeguard the agency's data? All this is going down in the wake of the Edward Snowden NSA story on surveillance in America. And what of the Post, the only newspaper ever to take down an American president? Like many papers, it was losing money, between $50 and $100 million a year. But is a potential conflict of interest a price that a money-losing publication simply has to pay after it gets bailed out by a tech billionaire? The Listening Post's Flo Phillips now on the Post, the Amazon CIA deal, and the possible implications for the paper's journalism.
A basic principle of journalism is to acknowledge when the owner of a media outlet has a major financial relationship with the subject of coverage. So begins the petition presented to the Washington Post last month, requesting the paper be open with its readers about the fact that its new owner, Jeff Bezos, has recently secured a $500 million deal for data processing and security between his old company, Amazon, and the CIA.
So on the one hand, Amazon is paid all this money by the CIA to keep its secrets as a clandestine agency. On the other hand, the Washington Post is reporting on all sorts of aspects of the CIA.
So the big issue now, of course, is surveillance, and what the NSA is doing, what the FBI is doing, what the CIA is doing, legally or illegally. And so if you have the owner of the Post bragging about looking forward to a very successful relationship with the CIA through Amazon.
Does that present any conflict for you, the fact that you provide the cloud that the CIA uses for its data?
I don't think so.
Give me a break. Of course there's a conflict.
Journalism requires, if it's going to be authentic, that people know what they're getting. And the best way to deal with that is to be candid with the readers whenever there's substantial coverage of the CIA. That's not happening.
The petition, signed by more than 33,000 Americans, was taken in person by Norman Solomon to the Post's executive editor, Martin Barron, requesting full disclosure about a potential conflict of interest whenever the Post reports on the CIA. The paper refused. The Listening Post requested an interview with Barron, who declined but sent us an email saying, "No journalists here have any links to the CIA. As is evident from our journalism, we've reported aggressively on the CIA and other agencies, much to their consternation."
The Post has certainly been reporting on NSA abuses. That really isn't the point. It's really the disclosure, shining the spotlight on it. Let people decide for themselves if the Post reporting is good and accurate and not pulling any punches. Would I say that you shouldn't trust anything that the Post writes about it? Absolutely not. But it should have that information of this built-in conflict when you do read one of their stories.
We put that to Dana Priest, the Post's Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative reporter, much of whose work over the past 28 years has focused on intelligence and counterterrorism.
It's correct that they say that we need to talk about our conflicts of interest. We don't need to do it in every story. We've done it before. Jeff Bezos owns the Post now, but it's really Amazon that has the relationship. We are going to be very mindful of the public perception. If anyone at the Washington Post, any editor, any owner, any publisher ever said to me, "Don't write about that because we have corporate interests," I would be out of there in a second.
The relationship between mainstream media outlets and the CIA is neither unique to the Post nor new. Back in 1977, Carl Bernstein, one half of the reporting team that catapulted the Post into the global spotlight with Watergate, produced an extensive report for Rolling Stone magazine, exposing previously classified relationships dating back to the 1950s between the CIA and some of the most influential media outlets in America, including the New York Times, CBS News, and Time magazine. According to Bernstein, more than 400 journalists secretly carried out assignments for the CIA during the Cold War. Bernstein wrote, "Reporters shared their notebooks, editors shared their staffs, including the New York Times, which, over a 15-year period, sent a dozen or so undercover reporters around the world to provide assistance to the agency."
Back in 1967, the Washington Post itself disclosed that the CIA had paid $1 million over 5 years to the Newspaper Guild, the union of reporters, editors, and others. And then in the 1970s, there was the Carl Bernstein piece. 1980, the Harrison Salisbury, top reporter at the New York Times, wrote a book that had 3 chapters on the Times and the CIA connections. So things don't change over time.
I hate to, beat on Jill Abramson, but she is now the executive editor of the New York Times. And where was she in the early 2000s? Well, she was bureau chief in Washington, where Judy Miller was working for her, tell us all manner of lies, weapons of mass destruction, mushroom clouds, everything else. She got promoted for that? So if these people keep bubbling to the top, and then you have conflicts of interest par excellence on the part of people like Bezos, well, hello, there's not much hope that the press, the mainstream press, is going to give us the right time of day.
And given the mainstream media's track record over the past decade, many Americans are understandably dubious when it comes to reporting on intelligence matters. A law was passed in 1996, prohibiting the use of journalists as agents or assets by intelligence agencies. But Congress then could never have foreseen a world in which a tech baron would buy an American media institution with a CIA contract hanging over them like a cloud, triggering questions over conflict of interest and demands for disclosure.
I have to be frank, when I read the petition, I thought, well, have you been reading the Washington Post? We have been second to nobody in the world reporting on critical stories having to do with the CIA. Just last month, I wrote a very large story called CIA Covert Action in Colombia. Just recently, the Post again has been out in front on writing about the National Security Agency, the documents that Edward Snowden has released, and we've continued to be very aggressive in that, despite the critical nature of the politics around that.
The revelations from Edward Snowden about the NSA have really shown how deep and wide the surveillance activities go. And so frankly, our petition urging full disclosure from the Washington Post about their CIA, Bezos, Amazon ties, this just begins to pull on the thread. If it's a few pixels on a screen, if it's a little bit of ink in the printed article, then people know a little bit more about the conflict of interest that exists.
4 decades ago, the Washington Post made journalistic history by taking down a president. Today, it's just another newspaper struggling to survive the changing economic landscape. Which begs the question, can the Post, or any paper, really afford to look a gift horse like Jeff Bezos in the mouth?